In the early 2000s, a name echoed across continents, synonymous with connection, reliability, and innovation: Nokia. It wasn't just a brand, it was a phenomenon, an undisputed titan of technology whose influence stretched from bustling metropolises to the most remote villages. For a glorious period, owning a Nokia phone wasn't merely a choice, it was almost a given. Everywhere you looked, someone was holding one of their iconic devices. The sturdy, almost indestructible Nokia 3310, a legend in its own right, sat in pockets and purses worldwide. The sleek, futuristic Nokia 8110, famously featured in The Matrix, captivated imaginations. And the groundbreaking N95, a true multimedia computer in your hand, pushed the boundaries of what a mobile phone could be. Imagine this. For years, 1 in every 2 mobile phones sold globally proudly bore the Nokia logo. This wasn't market leadership. It was market domination on a scale rarely seen before or since. Nokia was an unassailable fortress, an industrial marvel that seemed utterly immune to the whims of technological change. They were the benchmark, the standard against which all others were measured and often found wanting. So, how could a company so powerful, so deeply entrenched in the daily lives of billions, fall so dramatically? How could a giant that once commanded such an immense share of the global market virtually vanish from the mobile phone landscape within a single decade? This isn't just a story about a company. It's a modern epic of innovation, ambition, the seductive whisper of complacency, and the seismic shifts that can redefine an entire industry in the blink of an eye. We're about to embark on a journey through the rise, the reign, and the eventual precipitous decline of Nokia, exploring the decisions, the missed opportunities, and the relentless march of technological disruption that reshaped our world. But before the mobile phone even existed, before the digital age dawned, Nokia's roots were firmly planted in a very different kind of industry, deep within the forests of Finland. Our story begins not with microchips and antennas, but with wood pulp and paper. It was 1865 when Frederick Idestam established a groundwood pulp mill on the banks of the Tammerkoski Rapids in Tampere, Finland. This humble beginning, far removed from the futuristic gadgets it would one day inspire, laid the foundation for one of the 20th century's most influential companies. As the decades turned, Nokia wasn't content to simply produce paper. Like a resilient organism, it diversified, constantly adapting and expanding its reach. By the early 20th century, it was producing rubber products, tires, footwear, cables, a testament to its industrial prowess and a willingness to explore new frontiers. The company even had a hand in electricity generation, showcasing an astonishing breadth of manufacturing capabilities. The pivotal moment, the true harbinger of Nokia's future, arrived in the 1960s and 70s. This was when the company, through a series of mergers and strategic shifts, began to pivot towards electronics and, crucially, telecommunication. This wasn't a sudden leap, but a gradual, calculated move, driven by a far-sighted vision of a connected world. They weren't just making components. They were actively shaping the nascent field of electronic communication. It was during this period that Nokia developed some of the earliest portable communication devices, including the Mobira Talkman, a car phone that, while bulky by today's standards, represented a monumental step towards mobile communication. These early innovations, though primitive, were laying the essential groundwork, building the expertise and infrastructure that would eventually make Nokia a global tech powerhouse, long before the average person could even conceive of a mobile phone in their pocket. They were quietly assembling the pieces of a puzzle that would soon transform human interaction forever. The 1980s saw the dawn of mobile telephony, and Nokia was perfectly positioned to capitalize on it. They played a crucial role in the development and global adoption of the Nordic mobile telephone standard, one of the first automatic cellular networks. This wasn't just about building phones, it was about building the very infrastructure that made mobile communication possible. And then, in 1992, came a device that would change everything, the Nokia 1011. It wasn't the first mobile phone ever, but it was Nokia's first commercially available, truly handheld GSM digital mobile phone. This sleek, compact device marked the beginning of Nokia's ascent to mobile supremacy. Nokia's strategy was aggressive and brilliantly executed. They didn't just target affluent Western markets. They aggressively expanded into emerging economies, understanding the diverse needs of users across the globe. From the bustling streets of Asia to the remote corners of Africa, Nokia phones became ubiquitous. They built a reputation that was legendary: reliability, durability, and user-friendliness. A Nokia phone wasn't just a gadget, It was a trusted companion, often surviving drops and impacts that would render other devices useless. Their intuitive interfaces, long battery life, and robust build quality earned them fierce loyalty. This was backed by an unparalleled global manufacturing and distribution network, ensuring that wherever you were, a Nokia phone and its accessories were never far away. They weren't just selling phones. They were building an empire, brick by reliable brick. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. This wasn't just about building phones. It was about building the very infrastructure that made mobile communication possible. And then in 1992 came a device that would change everything, the Nokia 1011. It wasn't the first mobile phone ever, but it was Nokia's first commercially available, truly handheld GSM digital mobile phone. This sleek, compact device marked the beginning of Nokia's ascent to mobile supremacy. Nokia's strategy was aggressive and brilliantly executed. They didn't just target affluent Western markets. They aggressively expanded into emerging economies, understanding the diverse needs of users across the globe. From the bustling streets of Asia to the remote corners of Africa, Nokia phones became ubiquitous. They built a reputation that was legendary: reliability, durability, and user-friendliness. A Nokia phone wasn't just a gadget, it was a trusted companion, often surviving drops and impacts that would render other devices useless. Their intuitive interfaces, long battery life, and robust build quality earned them fierce loyalty. This was backed by an unparalleled global manufacturing and distribution network, ensuring that wherever you were, a Nokia phone and its accessories were never far away. They weren't just selling phones, they were building an empire, brick by reliable brick. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. The early 1990s were a period of intense growth and strategic consolidation for Nokia. As the world transitioned from analog to digital mobile networks, the company was at the forefront, not merely participating but driving the change. The NMT standard, which Nokia had championed, paved the way for the Global System for Mobile Communications, or GSM, which would become the dominant mobile communication standard worldwide. Nokia's early and deep involvement in GSM's development gave them an invaluable head start. They understood the technology intimately, allowing them to design phones that were not only compliant but also optimized for the new digital era. The Nokia 1011, launched in 1992, wasn't just a phone, it was a statement. It was a clear signal that Nokia was ready to lead the charge into a future where mobile communication was no longer a luxury for the few, but a practical tool for the many. Its simple, robust design and clear digital voice quality immediately resonated with consumers. But Nokia didn't rest on its laurels. The company understood that success in this rapidly evolving market required continuous innovation and a deep understanding of user behavior. They invested heavily in research and development, constantly pushing the boundaries of what a mobile phone could do. This commitment to innovation manifested in a dizzying array of models, each designed to cater to specific market segments and evolving consumer demands. From the business-focused Communicator series, which offered early email and fax capabilities, to the vibrant and customizable phones aimed at a younger demographic, Nokia had a device for everyone. They were masters of industrial design, creating phones that were not only functional but also aesthetically appealing. The iconic 3210, with its internal antenna and predictive text input, was a massive hit, particularly among young people, and sold over 160 million units. It was a phone that allowed for self-expression through its changeable covers, turning a utilitarian device into a fashion statement. Nokia's success wasn't just about hardware, it was also about the ecosystem they fostered. They were pioneers in developing intuitive user interfaces that made complex technology accessible to the average person. The famous Nokia ringtone, a melodic adaptation of a 19th century guitar piece, became instantly recognizable worldwide, a sonic signature of the brand's ubiquity. They understood the power of personalization, allowing users to customize their phones with ringtones, wallpapers, and games, creating a personal connection that went beyond mere functionality. Their manufacturing prowess was equally impressive. Nokia built massive, efficient factories across the globe, capable of producing millions of phones a month. This scale allowed them to drive down costs, making mobile phones more affordable and accelerating their adoption in developing markets. Their robust supply chain and distribution networks ensured that these devices reached every corner of the planet, from bustling urban centers to remote villages. This global reach was a critical differentiator, allowing Nokia to establish an unparalleled market presence that competitors struggled to match. The company's approach to market entry was also highly strategic. Instead of simply pushing Western models into diverse cultures, Nokia often adapted its products to local needs and preferences. They understood that a phone used in a humid, tropical climate might need different features or materials than one used in a cold, dry environment. This localized approach, combined with their global manufacturing capabilities, allowed them to build strong brand loyalty and capture significant market share in regions where other manufacturers struggled to gain a foothold. By the late 1990s and early 2000s, Nokia had solidified its position as the undisputed king of the mobile world. Their phones were everywhere, deeply woven into the fabric of daily life. They were the benchmark for reliability, the standard for user experience, and the epitome of mobile innovation. This period marked the zenith of Nokia's power, a time when their dominance seemed unassailable, and the future appeared to be a perpetual extension of their current success. The stage was set for a reign that few companies in history have ever achieved, a period where Nokia was not just a player in the market, but the market itself. Their brand was synonymous with progress, connection, and the future, a future they seemed to be designing, one phone at a time. The sheer volume of their sales, the constant stream of new innovative models, and their omnipresent global footprint painted a picture of an empire that was destined to last forever. They were, in every sense, the king of the world. The early 1990s were a period of intense growth and strategic consolidation for Nokia. As the world transitioned from analog to digital mobile networks, the company was at the forefront, not merely participating, but driving the change. The NMT standard, which Nokia had championed, paved the way for the Global System for Mobile Communications, or GSM, which would become the dominant mobile communication standard worldwide. Nokia's early and deep involvement in GSM's development gave them an invaluable head start. They understood the technology intimately, allowing them to design phones that were not only compliant but also optimized for the new digital era. The Nokia 1011, launched in 1992, wasn't just a phone, it was a statement. It was a clear signal that Nokia was ready to lead the charge into a future where mobile communication was no longer a luxury for the few, but a practical tool for the many. Its simple, robust design and clear digital voice quality immediately resonated with consumers. But Nokia didn't rest on its laurels. The company understood that success in this rapidly evolving market required continuous innovation and a deep understanding of user behavior. They invested heavily in research and development, constantly pushing the boundaries of what a mobile phone could do. This commitment to innovation manifested in a dizzying array of models, each designed to cater to specific market segments and evolving consumer demands. From the business-focused Communicator series, which offered early email and fax capabilities, to the vibrant and customizable phones aimed at a younger demographic, Nokia had a device for everyone. They were masters of industrial design, creating phones that were not only functional but also aesthetically appealing. The iconic 3210, with its internal antenna and predictive text input, was a massive hit, particularly among young people, and sold over 160 million units. It was a phone that allowed for self-expression through its changeable covers, turning a utilitarian device into a fashion statement. Nokia's success wasn't just about hardware, it was also about the ecosystem they fostered. They were pioneers in developing intuitive user interfaces that made complex technology accessible to the average person. The famous Nokia ringtone, a melodic adaptation of a 19th century guitar piece, became instantly recognizable worldwide, a sonic signature of the brand's ubiquity. They understood the power of personalization, allowing users to customize their phones with ringtones, wallpapers, and games, creating a personal connection that went beyond mere functionality. Their manufacturing prowess was equally impressive. Nokia built massive, efficient factories across the globe, capable of producing millions of phones a month. This scale allowed them to drive down costs, making mobile phones more affordable and accelerating their adoption in developing markets. Their robust supply chain and distribution networks ensured that these devices reached every corner of the planet, from bustling urban centers to remote villages. This global reach was a critical differentiator, allowing Nokia to establish an unparalleled market presence that competitors struggled to match. The company's approach to market entry was also highly strategic. Instead of simply pushing Western models into diverse cultures, Nokia often adapted its products to local needs and preferences. They understood that a phone used in a humid, tropical climate might need different features or materials than one used in a cold, dry environment. This localized approach, combined with their global manufacturing capabilities, allowed them to build strong brand loyalty and capture significant market share in regions where other manufacturers struggled to gain a foothold. By the late 1990s and early 2000s, Nokia had solidified its position as the undisputed king of the mobile world. Their phones were everywhere, deeply woven into the fabric of daily life. They were the benchmark for reliability, the standard for user experience, and the epitome of mobile innovation. This period marked the zenith of Nokia's power, a time when their dominance seemed unassailable, and the future appeared to be a perpetual extension of their current success. The stage was set for a reign that few companies in history have ever achieved, a period where Nokia was not just a player in the market, but the market itself. Their brand was synonymous with progress, connection, and the future, a future they seemed to be designing, one phone at a time. The sheer volume of their sales, the constant stream of new innovative models, and their omnipresent global footprint painted a picture of an empire that was destined to last forever. They were, in every sense, the king of the world. Nokia's market share during this period was staggering, often exceeding 40% globally. This wasn't merely a statistic, it was a cultural phenomenon. Nokia phones became status symbols, essential tools for business, and the primary means of connection for billions. The sight of a Nokia device was as common as a wristwatch, an indispensable part of modern living. This pervasive presence was no accident. It was the result of a relentless pursuit of excellence in design, engineering, and market understanding. They didn't just build phones, they built trust. The innovation engine at Nokia was constantly humming. The company poured vast resources into research and development, not just incrementally improving existing models, but conceptualizing entirely new ways for people to interact with mobile technology. Features that we now take for granted, like customizable profiles, polyphonic ringtones, and even basic internet browsing, were pioneered or perfected by Nokia. Their design teams were legendary, creating devices that were both robust and elegant, practical and desirable. The iconic candy bar form factor, the slide phones, the flip phones. Nokia explored every ergonomic possibility, always with an eye toward user comfort and functionality. Crucially, Nokia was an early proponent of what would later become known as the smartphone. Long before the iPhone, Nokia's N-series and communicator devices offered advanced features, web browsing, email, and even rudimentary app capabilities. These devices often ran on Symbian OS, an operating system that, for its time, was remarkably sophisticated. Symbian allowed for multitasking, supported a wide array of applications, and provided a flexible platform for developers, albeit one with a steep learning curve. It was the bedrock upon which Nokia built its vision of mobile computing, positioning them far ahead of many competitors in terms of functional depth. The perception of Nokia during this golden age was one of an unassailable fortress. They were too big to fail, too innovative to be surpassed, too deeply embedded in the global consciousness to be dislodged. Analysts and consumers alike saw Nokia as an enduring titan, a company so dominant that its position seemed almost predestined. The world communicated through Nokia, and it felt like that reality would continue indefinitely. This era represented peak power, a time when Nokia truly reigned supreme, not just in sales figures, but in the collective imagination of a connected world. The company was a beacon of Finnish technological prowess, a global champion whose success story seemed without end. This era of unparalleled dominance, where Nokia's market share often exceeded a staggering 40% globally, transformed the company from a mere manufacturer into a cultural phenomenon. Nokia phones weren't just devices. They were extensions of identity, status symbols, and indispensable tools that wove themselves into the very fabric of daily life for billions. The ubiquitous sight of a Nokia device, clutched in hands across every continent, became as commonplace and essential as a wristwatch, signifying a profound shift in how humanity connected and communicated. This pervasive presence was no accident. It was the meticulously crafted outcome of an unyielding pursuit of excellence in design, engineering, and a deep intuitive understanding of diverse global markets. Nokia didn't merely sell phones, they cultivated trust, building a brand synonymous with reliability and forward-thinking innovation. At the heart of this empire hummed an innovation engine of immense power. Nokia poured colossal resources into research and development, not content with incremental improvements, but constantly striving to conceptualize entirely new paradigms for human interaction with mobile technology. Features now considered standard, such as customizable user profiles, the rich tapestry of polyphonic ringtones, and even the nascent stages of mobile internet browsing, were either pioneered or brought to perfection by Nokia. Their design teams were legendary, crafting devices that masterfully blended robustness with elegance and practicality with desirability. From the iconic candy bar form factor to the sleek slide phones and the sophisticated flip phones, Nokia meticulously explored every ergonomic possibility, always prioritizing user comfort and intuitive functionality. This relentless drive for innovation ensured a constant stream of groundbreaking products that kept them at the forefront of the industry. Crucially, Nokia was a formidable early proponent of what would later mature into the modern smartphone. Long before the advent of Apple's iPhone, Nokia's N series and the business-focused communicator devices offered an array of advanced functionalities. These included sophisticated web browsing capabilities, seamless email integration, and even rudimentary application support, pushing the boundaries of what a mobile device could achieve. These pioneering devices frequently operated on Symbian OS, an operating system that during its heyday was remarkably sophisticated and powerful. Symbian provided a robust foundation enabling true multitasking, supporting a diverse ecosystem of applications, and offering a flexible platform for developers, despite its somewhat steep learning curve. It was the technological bedrock upon which Nokia constructed its expansive vision of mobile computing, positioning the company considerably ahead of many of its competitors in terms of functional depth and technological foresight. The prevailing perception of Nokia during this golden age was that of an unassailable fortress. The company appeared too colossal to fail, too inherently innovative to be outmaneuvered, and too deeply ingrained in the global consciousness to ever be dislodged. Industry analysts, technology pundits, and the vast consumer base alike viewed Nokia as an enduring titan, a corporate entity so utterly dominant that its preeminent position seemed almost divinely ordained. The world, quite literally, communicated through Nokia devices, and the prevailing sentiment was that this reality would persist indefinitely, extending into a future designed and dictated by their unwavering leadership. This period represented the absolute zenith of Nokia's power, a time when the company truly reigned supreme, not merely in the cold, hard statistics of sales figures, but profoundly within the collective imagination of an increasingly connected world. Nokia was not just a player in the mobile phone market. It was, in many respects, the market itself. Its brand became synonymous with progress, with connection, and with the very concept of the future, a future that Nokia seemed to be actively designing, one groundbreaking phone at a time. The sheer volume of their sales, the relentless release of new innovative models, and their omnipresent global footprint painted an indelible picture of an empire destined to endure forever. This dominance instilled a profound sense of security, both within the company's ranks and among its vast user base, fostering an environment where continued success was not just expected, but virtually guaranteed. The company was a shining beacon of Finnish technological prowess, a global champion whose success story appeared to possess no conceivable end. This deep-seated belief in their own invincibility, while understandable given their achievements, would ultimately play a role in their future challenges, as the very perception of being unassailable can sometimes breed a dangerous degree of complacency. Yet, beneath this seemingly impregnable facade of dominance, while Nokia was soaring to unprecedented heights, subtle but profound shifts were already taking root across the technological landscape, planting the seeds of an entirely new era. These were not cataclysmic events, but rather quiet tremors, almost imperceptible at first, that would eventually converge to reshape the very foundations of the mobile industry. The world was hurtling towards an internet-centric future, and with it the importance of data, connectivity, and software was beginning to eclipse the traditional focus on hardware and voice communication. The rise of broadband internet, both fixed and mobile, was a pivotal yet often underestimated force. As internet speeds increased exponentially, the possibilities for mobile devices expanded far beyond simple calls and text messages. Suddenly, the ability to stream video, browse complex websites, and access rich interactive content on the go became not just a luxury, but a rapidly emerging expectation. This wasn't merely about faster access. It was about a fundamental redefinition of what a mobile phone could and should do. Nokia, with its robust hardware and Symbian OS, was certainly capable of internet access, but its ecosystem and user experience was still largely optimized for a pre-broadband world. A world where data was expensive, slow, and secondary to voice. Concurrently, competitors, often smaller and more agile, were experimenting with what they envisioned as the next generation of mobile devices. Early attempts at smartphones that, while often clunky and far from mass-market ready, hinted at a future where the device was a portal to the internet, not just a phone. Companies like Palm with its Treo line and even Microsoft with its Windows mobile platform were pushing the boundaries, trying to integrate more PC-like functionalities into handheld devices. These early efforts were far from perfect. Their interfaces were often cumbersome, their battery lives abysmal, and their app ecosystems virtually non-existent. They were niche products, appealing primarily to business users and early adopters willing to tolerate their quirks for the promise of advanced connectivity. Yet, they represented a nascent understanding that the hardware was only one part of the equation. The software, the services, and the overall user experience were rapidly gaining prominence. They were pointing, however imperfectly, towards a future that was less about making calls and more about consuming and creating digital content. Within the hallowed halls of Nokia itself, these shifting currents did not go entirely unnoticed. There were internal debates, often passionate and sometimes fractious, about the strategic direction the company should take. The core of these discussions revolved around a critical dilemma. Should Nokia continue to prioritize its legendary hardware engineering and manufacturing prowess, or should it pivot more aggressively towards software development, services, and the creation of an open dynamic ecosystem? The company had always excelled at building robust, reliable, and beautifully designed physical devices. Its mastery of industrial design and supply chain logistics was second to none. But the world was increasingly moving towards a software-defined experience, where the brain of the device, its operating system and applications, was becoming the primary differentiator. Another fault line in these internal discussions concerned the nature of Nokia's ecosystem. Symbian, while powerful, was a relatively closed and complex platform, controlled tightly by Nokia and its partners. The idea of an open ecosystem, where third-party developers could easily create and distribute applications, was still nascent, but its potential was becoming clearer. Should Nokia open up Symbian more widely, risking fragmentation and loss of control, or maintain its proprietary approach, ensuring a consistent but potentially less innovative experience? These were not easy questions, and the answers were not immediately obvious in a landscape still dominated by Nokia's hardware might. These early signs of complacency, or perhaps more accurately, an inability to adapt quickly enough, were subtle. They manifested as a slight hesitation, a delay in fully committing to the software revolution, a lingering belief that Nokia's hardware superiority and brand loyalty would shield it from the emerging threats. The company's sheer size and past successes, which had been its greatest strengths, now risked becoming its Achilles heel. The established processes, the immense infrastructure, and the deeply ingrained corporate culture that had propelled Nokia to the top were now slowing its ability to react with the agility required by the rapidly accelerating pace of technological change. The very fortress that had seemed unassailable was, in retrospect, beginning to show hairline cracks in its foundation. Cracks that would soon be exposed by an impending seismic shift in the industry. The world was about to witness a revolution, and Nokia, the reigning monarch, was not yet fully prepared for the dethroning that lay ahead. Then, on a seemingly ordinary Tuesday, January 9, 2007, the mobile world as everyone knew it was irrevocably altered. A figure stepped onto a stage in San Francisco, clad in his signature black turtleneck, and uttered words that would echo through history. Today, Apple is going to reinvent the phone. Steve Jobs, with his characteristic showmanship, unveiled the iPhone, a device that was not merely an incremental improvement, but a radical reimagining of what a mobile phone could be. It was a moment that simultaneously captivated the world and, in retrospect, signaled the beginning of the end for the old guard, including Nokia. The iPhone was a revelation. A sleek buttonless slab of glass and metal that defied conventional wisdom. Its revolutionary multi-touch interface, allowing users to interact directly with the screen using gestures rather than a stylus or physical buttons, was nothing short of groundbreaking. Pinching to zoom, swiping to scroll, tapping to select, these intuitive interactions felt like magic compared to the cumbersome navigation of existing smartphones. But it wasn't just the hardware. It was the seamless integration of hardware and software, the elegant design, and the promise of an entirely new way to experience mobile computing that truly set it apart. This device wasn't just a phone for making calls. It was an internet device, a music player, and a portable computer, all rolled into one beautiful package. Crucially, the iPhone also introduced the concept of a curated app ecosystem, which would later blossom into the App Store. While not immediately available at launch, the potential for third-party developers to create applications that extended the phone's functionality was a powerful differentiator. This vision transformed the phone from a static tool into a dynamic, personalized platform capable of evolving with user needs and technological advancements. It shifted the focus from merely having a device to having an experience, an experience that was constantly enriched by a burgeoning community of developers. Nokia's initial reaction to this seismic event was, in hindsight, a mixture of underestimation and outright dismissal. From the Finnish headquarters, the iPhone was often viewed as a niche luxury product, an expensive gadget for the American market, unlikely to gain significant traction against the robust, feature-rich, and globally dominant Nokia handsets. Executives reportedly scoffed at its lack of physical keyboard, its relatively high price point, and its reliance on a single carrier. They believed their vast portfolio of devices, catering to every price segment and region, combined with their unparalleled brand loyalty and distribution network, would easily weather this new competitor. There was a prevalent sentiment that the iPhone was a toy, not a serious communication device for the masses. This underestimation proved to be a fatal miscalculation. The fundamental difference between Nokia's worldview and Apple's vision became glaringly apparent. For Nokia, the mobile phone was, at its core, a communication device, a tool for making calls, sending texts, and perhaps some basic internet browsing. Its design philosophy revolved around functionality, durability, and battery life, optimized for a world where connectivity was still primarily about voice. The internet capabilities were secondary, an add-on rather than the central pillar of the experience. Symbian, while powerful, was designed for a pre-internet mobile paradigm, emphasizing features and stability over a fluid, touch-centric user interface. The iPhone, on the other hand, was conceived as an internet device first and foremost, with telephony being just one of its many functions. It was designed from the ground up for web browsing, email, and multimedia consumption. Its operating system, iOS, was built to be intuitive, visually appealing, and highly responsive to touch, a stark contrast to Symbian's more complex menu-driven interface. This difference in philosophy was not merely a matter of preference. It represented a fundamental divergence in understanding the future trajectory of mobile technology. Apple saw the phone as the primary portal to the digital world, a personal computer in your pocket, while Nokia still largely viewed it as an advanced telephone. This iPhone moment marked the beginning of the end for the old paradigm, even if its full implications were not immediately apparent to everyone, especially not to Nokia. The market was not just shifting, it was undergoing a complete transformation. The battle would no longer be solely about hardware specifications or call quality. It would be about software ecosystems, user experience, and the ability to seamlessly integrate the vast resources of the internet into a handheld device. Nokia, with its deeply entrenched focus on hardware excellence and its mature but increasingly outdated Symbian operating system, was ill-prepared for this new battlefield. The cracks in its foundation, once hairline, were now threatening to widen into chasms, as the world braced for a mobile revolution that Nokia had tragically failed to foresee in its true magnitude. The giant had been stirred, but it was still slumbering, oblivious to the storm that was rapidly gathering on the horizon. The seeds of its decline, sown through internal debates and subtle complacency, were about to be watered by the relentless innovation of its new rivals. The iPhone's dramatic entrance was just the first tremor. The true earthquake, the one that would fundamentally reshape the mobile landscape and accelerate Nokia's decline, arrived in the form of Google's Android. While Apple had introduced a revolutionary device, Google unleashed a revolutionary platform, an open-source, flexible operating system designed to be adopted by any manufacturer. This strategic move by Google effectively democratized the smartphone revolution, allowing a multitude of companies to compete directly with Apple and inadvertently to outmaneuver Nokia. Android emerged as a formidable challenge, not because it was initially superior to iOS, but because of its open nature. Manufacturers like Samsung, HTC, Motorola, and countless others could adapt Android to their hardware, customize its interface, and differentiate their products without the immense investment required to develop an operating system from scratch. This fostered an explosion of innovation and competition, leading to a dizzying array of devices across all price points, each vying for consumer attention. The sheer volume and variety of Android phones quickly created a massive ecosystem, attracting developers and users at an unprecedented pace. Nokia, still reeling from the iPhone's impact and struggling with its internal inertia, found itself caught in an agonizing dilemma. Should it stubbornly stick with its proprietary Symbian operating system, or should it embrace one of the emerging platforms? The choice was fraught with peril, and the consequences of inaction, or indeed of the wrong action, would prove devastating. Symbian, once a vanguard of smartphone technology, was now showing its age. While it had powered millions of devices and offered a robust feature set, its architecture was complex, its development environment challenging, and its user experience increasingly clunky compared to the smooth, intuitive interfaces of iOS and the rapidly maturing Android. Moreover, Symbian suffered from severe fragmentation. Different manufacturers and even different Nokia models often ran highly customized versions of Symbian, making it difficult for developers to create applications that worked seamlessly across the entire ecosystem. This fragmentation severely hampered the growth of a vibrant App Store, a critical component that Apple had proven indispensable. Developers, seeing the burgeoning user bases and simpler development tools of iOS and Android, increasingly gravitated towards those platforms, leaving Symbian in a state of dwindling relevance. The accelerating pace of innovation from competitors became a relentless tide, threatening to drown Nokia. While Nokia's engineers were still refining Symbian and attempting to create touch-friendly interfaces, Apple and Google were pushing the boundaries of what a mobile phone could do. High-resolution screens, powerful processors, advanced cameras, and seamless cloud integration were becoming standard features on competitor devices, often at lower price points than Nokia's premium offerings. The app stores of iOS and Android were brimming with millions of applications, transforming phones into indispensable tools for everything from banking to gaming to social networking. Nokia's OV Store, its attempt at an app ecosystem, struggled to gain traction and offered a fraction of the content available on rival platforms. The internal debates within Nokia intensified, reflecting the growing panic. Some factions argued for a complete overhaul of Symbian, others for adopting Android, and a smaller but influential group advocated for a partnership with Microsoft and its Windows Phone platform. Each option presented significant challenges. Overhauling Symbian would be a monumental task, potentially delaying new product launches by years while the market continued its rapid evolution. Adopting Android would mean surrendering control over the software experience and becoming just another hardware manufacturer in a crowded market, competing directly with the very brands that had benefited from Android's open nature. Partnering with Microsoft was an unknown, a gamble on a nascent ecosystem. The leadership, perhaps still clinging to the belief in Nokia's inherent strength and unique legacy, struggled to make a decisive choice. This indecision, this prolonged period of strategic ambiguity, proved to be a fatal weakness. While Nokia deliberated, its competitors moved with lightning speed, capturing market share and mindshare. Consumers, increasingly drawn to the rich app ecosystems and intuitive interfaces of iPhones and Android devices, began to abandon their beloved Nokias. The brand loyalty that had once been Nokia's greatest asset started to erode as the perceived value and capabilities of competitor phones far outstripped its own offerings. Nokia's traditional strengths, hardware durability, battery life, and global distribution were no longer sufficient differentiators. The battleground had shifted from hardware specifications to software experience and ecosystem integration. Nokia, the undisputed king of hardware, found itself ill-equipped for this new kind of warfare. Its robust manufacturing processes and supply chains, once a source of immense competitive advantage, now seemed like an anchor, slowing down its ability to adapt and innovate at the speed required by the market. The company's sheer size and its deeply ingrained corporate culture, which had once fostered stability and meticulous engineering, now contributed to a bureaucratic inertia. Decision-making became slow, fragmented, and often paralyzed by internal politics and conflicting visions. The agility and entrepreneurial spirit that had characterized its early rise in mobile communications had been replaced by a cautious, committee-driven approach. This internal struggle, combined with the external onslaught of the iPhone and the rapidly expanding Android ecosystem, created a perfect storm. Nokia, the giant, was no longer merely slumbering. It was being actively outmaneuvered, out-innovated, and steadily pushed towards the precipice of irrelevance in the very market it had once so thoroughly dominated. The stage was set for a desperate, last-ditch attempt to reclaim its former glory, one that would involve a controversial and ultimately fateful partnership. The internal struggles and strategic paralysis culminated in a dramatic moment on February 11, 2011, when Stephen Elop, Nokia's newly appointed CEO and a former Microsoft executive, sent a company-wide memo that would become infamous. Titled Burning Platform, it starkly outlined the existential crisis facing the company. Elop likened Nokia to a man on a burning oil platform, forced to jump into the freezing unknown sea rather than be consumed by the flames. He painted a grim picture of Nokia's declining market share, its inability to compete with Apple and Google, and the undeniable fact that its flagship Symbian operating system was no longer viable. The memo was a raw, unfiltered acknowledgement of Nokia's precarious position, a desperate call to action meant to shake the company out of its complacency. Elop's memo paved the way for one of the most controversial decisions in Nokia's history. abandoning both Symbian and the promising Linux-based MeeGo platform in favor of a strategic partnership with Microsoft and its Windows Phone operating system. This announcement, made jointly by Elop and Microsoft CEO Steve Ballmer, sent shockwaves through the industry and within Nokia itself. MeeGo, developed in collaboration with Intel, had shown significant potential, offering a modern, intuitive user experience that many believed could have been a true competitor to iOS and Android. Its abandonment, especially after years of development and investment, was seen by many as a betrayal of Nokia's engineering talent and a surrender of its independence. The rationale behind choosing Windows Phone was multifaceted, yet deeply flawed in retrospect. Elop argued that Nokia needed a third ecosystem to compete against the duopoly of Apple's iOS and Google's Android. He believed that aligning with a strong established software giant like Microsoft would provide the necessary resources, developer support, and marketing muscle to challenge the incumbents. Microsoft, for its part, desperately needed a hardware partner to give Windows Phone a fighting chance in the smartphone market, having struggled to gain traction with other manufacturers. The partnership was envisioned as a symbiotic relationship, marrying Nokia's world-class hardware design and manufacturing capabilities with Microsoft's software prowess. However, the consequences of this decision were immediate and devastating. The transition away from Symbian was slow and poorly executed, creating a vacuum in Nokia's product lineup. Consumers, already flocking to iPhones and Android devices, were unwilling to wait for the unproven Windows Phone devices. Developers, already hesitant to invest in Symbian, were even more wary of a nascent platform that had yet to prove its viability. Alienating developers was a critical misstep, as the strength of a smartphone ecosystem increasingly hinged on the breadth and quality of its available applications. Without a compelling app store, Windows Phone struggled to attract users, perpetuating a vicious cycle. No users, no developers, no developers, no apps, no apps, no users. Internally, the cultural challenges became insurmountable. Nokia, once a beacon of Finnish ingenuity and engineering excellence, was plagued by bureaucracy and a palpable lack of agility. The burning platform memo, while intended to galvanize, also created deep divisions and eroded morale. Many longtime employees, proud of Nokia's independent spirit and technical achievements, viewed the Microsoft partnership as a capitulation, a loss of identity. There was a pervasive resistance to change, a deeply ingrained corporate culture that struggled to adapt to the rapid pace of the smartphone revolution. Decision-making processes were slow, often bogged down by layers of management and internal politics. The company, once a nimble pioneer, had become a lumbering giant, incapable of pivoting quickly enough to meet the demands of a dynamic market. The move to Windows Phone also meant that Nokia was no longer in full control of its software destiny. While it could influence aspects of the user experience and hardware integration, the core operating system and its development roadmap were dictated by Microsoft. This limited Nokia's ability to differentiate its products through software innovation, forcing it to compete primarily on hardware design and camera technology, which, while excellent, were no longer enough to win the market. The time it took to bring Windows Phone devices to market was glacial compared to the rapid iteration cycles of its competitors. Each delay meant more lost market share, more eroding brand loyalty, and a further entrenchment of iOS and Android in the minds of consumers. The gamble on Windows Phone was a desperate attempt to rescue a sinking ship, but it ultimately proved to be a miscalculation of monumental proportions. Instead of providing a lifeline, it entangled Nokia in a platform that, despite Microsoft's vast resources, failed to gain significant traction. This strategic misstep accelerated Nokia's decline, pushing the company further into the red and setting the stage for its eventual, heartbreaking exit from the mobile phone manufacturing business. The burning platform had indeed forced a jump, but the chosen waters proved to be just as treacherous, leading Nokia not to safety, but towards an uncertain fate. The once dominant king of mobile was now a shadow of its former self, its future hanging by a thread. The gamble on Windows Phone, intended as a bold strategic pivot, instead initiated a period of rapid and irreversible market erosion for Nokia. The once unquestioned leader in mobile telephony found itself in an accelerating freefall, losing ground daily to the relentless ascent of Apple's iOS and Google's Android. Sales figures, which had once been the envy of the industry, began to plummet with alarming speed. Products that had once defined innovation and reliability were now perceived as dated, clunky, and increasingly irrelevant in a market captivated by sleek touchscreens and expansive app ecosystems. Nokia's struggle to compete was multifaceted. On the features front, its Windows Phone devices, while often boasting excellent camera technology and robust build quality, simply could not match the sheer breadth of applications and seamless user experiences offered by its rivals. The app gap was a chasm, not just a gap. Consumers, having grown accustomed to the vast and ever-growing libraries of apps on iOS and Android, found Windows phones offering sparse and often lacking in quality. Essential services, popular games, and social media platforms were either delayed, poorly implemented, or entirely absent. This deficiency was a death knell in an era where the smartphone was rapidly evolving from a communication tool into a personal computing hub. Its utility defined as much by its software ecosystem as its hardware specifications. Beyond apps, the fundamental user experience of Windows Phone, with its tile-based interface, failed to resonate with a mass market increasingly familiar with icon-driven interfaces. While some appreciated its unique aesthetic, it was simply not enough to pry users away from the established comfort of iOS or the customizability of Android. Nokia's brand, once a beacon of innovation and reliability, began to suffer significant erosion. Years of trust and loyalty, painstakingly built over decades, evaporated as consumers watched the company struggle to keep pace. The perception shifted from Nokia being a cutting-edge leader to a struggling legacy brand, desperately trying to catch up. This decline in brand perception was not just about market share. It was about the very identity of Nokia in the eyes of its global customer base. The financial consequences were immediate and severe. As sales dwindled, so did revenues and profits. The company, once a highly profitable enterprise, began to bleed money, pushing it deeper into a financial crisis. Each quarter brought grim news: further reductions in market share, increased operating losses, and a growing sense of desperation. The stock price, once a symbol of Finnish industrial might, plummeted, reflecting the market's growing lack of confidence in Nokia's ability to navigate the seismic shifts in the mobile landscape. The strategic partnership with Microsoft, instead of stemming the tide, seemed to accelerate the company's financial woes as the costs associated with the transition, coupled with the lack of sales, compounded the existing problems. Analysts and industry observers watched in disbelief as the once unassailable giant faltered. The speed of the decline was breathtaking, a stark testament to the unforgiving nature of technological disruption. It highlighted that even immense market power and a storied history of innovation were no guarantee of survival in an era of rapid technological change. The internal cultural challenges, the slow decision-making, and the inability to adapt quickly to new paradigms had created a perfect storm. Nokia, which had prided itself on understanding global markets and user needs, seemed to have lost its touch, misjudging the fundamental shift from hardware-centric communication devices to software-driven internet platforms. The market erosion wasn't just about losing customers to competitors, it was about losing relevance. The narrative around Nokia shifted from being a pioneer to a cautionary tale, a stark example of what happens when a dominant player fails to anticipate and respond effectively to disruptive innovation. The company found itself caught in a vicious cycle. Falling sales led to reduced investment in R&D, which in turn led to less competitive products, further exacerbating sales declines. The burning platform had indeed forced Nokia to jump, but the chosen path had led it into even colder, more turbulent waters, where its once proud fleet was now adrift, battered by the unforgiving waves of the new mobile era. The financial crisis loomed large, threatening to capsize the entire operation, making it painfully clear that a drastic intervention was inevitable if any part of Nokia's mobile legacy were to survive. The stage was tragically set for an even more dramatic turn, one that would redefine Nokia's relationship with the mobile phone market forever. The relentless market erosion and mounting financial pressures culminated in September 2013, marking a truly historic and poignant moment for Nokia and the entire technology world. After months of speculation, intense negotiations, and a palpable sense of impending change, Microsoft announced its acquisition of Nokia's Devices and Services division. This wasn't merely a business transaction. It was the symbolic end of an era, effectively concluding Nokia's long and illustrious journey as a direct manufacturer of mobile phones, a role it had defined and dominated for decades. The once unquestionable king of mobile, the Finnish giant that had put a phone in the hands of billions, was selling off the very heart of its consumer business. For many, the news was bittersweet. On one hand, it seemed like a natural progression of the partnership that had begun with the Windows Phone strategy. Microsoft, a software behemoth, was now fully committing to the hardware aspect, aiming to integrate its operating system more deeply and holistically into the devices themselves. The vision articulated by both companies was clear: to create a powerful, unified ecosystem that could finally challenge the duopoly of Apple and Android. Stephen Elop, Nokia's CEO, who had famously penned the burning platform memo and spearheaded the Windows Phone alliance, would transition to Microsoft as part of the deal, leading their devices team. It was a move that some saw as an admission of defeat, while others viewed it as a necessary, albeit painful, step towards survival. The acquisition price, approximately $2 billion, was a significant sum, yet it paled in comparison to Nokia's market capitalization during its peak. It highlighted just how much value had been lost in the preceding years. Microsoft, under CEO Steve Ballmer at the time, saw an opportunity to control both the hardware and software aspects of its mobile strategy, mirroring Apple's successful model. They believed that by owning Nokia's manufacturing capabilities, its supply chain, its design expertise, and its vast patent portfolio, they could finally give Windows Phone the dedicated push it needed to succeed. The idea was that a fully integrated approach would lead to better designed devices, more optimized software, and a more compelling user experience, thereby attracting developers and consumers alike. However, the reality that unfolded post-acquisition was far from the grand vision. Despite Microsoft's immense financial resources and marketing muscle, Windows Phone continued to struggle to gain significant market share. The app gap, which had plagued Nokia's Windows Phone devices, persisted and even widened as developers prioritized iOS and Android, platforms with vastly larger user bases. Consumers, by this point, were deeply entrenched in their preferred ecosystems, and the allure of a third option was simply not strong enough to prompt a mass exodus. The unique tile-based interface, once seen as a differentiator, failed to capture the imagination of the broader market, which largely preferred the more traditional icon grid layouts. Microsoft poured billions into promoting Windows Phone and its new Lumia devices, but the efforts largely proved futile. The market had already matured, with Apple and Google having established seemingly insurmountable leads. The pace of innovation in the mobile space was relentless, and Windows Phone, despite its strengths, often felt a step behind. The ecosystem lacked the vibrancy and breadth of its competitors, and without a compelling reason for developers to invest their time and resources, the platform remained in a perpetual state of catch-up. The culmination of these struggles came swiftly. Just a couple of years after the acquisition, in 2015, Microsoft announced a massive write-down of its Nokia acquisition, effectively admitting that the investment had largely failed to yield the desired results. Thousands of employees were laid off, and the vision of Windows Phone becoming a significant player in the mobile market was largely abandoned. The Nokia brand, which Microsoft had briefly used for its feature phones and some smartphones, was eventually phased out in favor of Microsoft Lumia. But even that rebranding couldn't stem the tide. The restructuring within Microsoft saw the devices division scale back dramatically, with the company eventually shifting its focus away from consumer smartphones to enterprise solutions and cloud services. The dream of a unified Microsoft mobile ecosystem, built on the back of Nokia's hardware prowess, had crumbled. The acquisition, intended to be a lifeline for Nokia's mobile division and a catalyst for Microsoft's mobile ambitions, instead became a costly lesson in the brutal realities of technological disruption and market dominance. For Nokia itself, the sale of its devices and services division marked a profound pivot. While the brand name remained, the company that had once shaped the mobile world was no longer directly making the phones that bore its name. It was a stark and painful reminder that even the most dominant companies are vulnerable to rapid shifts in technology and consumer behavior. The once proud Finnish icon had been forced to shed its most recognizable consumer-facing business, leaving behind a legacy of innovation but also a cautionary tale of strategic missteps and the perils of underestimating disruptive change. The mobile phone industry, a landscape Nokia had helped create, had moved on, and Nokia's direct role in its evolution had seemingly reached its end. The story of Nokia's dramatic decline, culminating in the Microsoft acquisition, offers a profound and sobering case study for any business navigating the treacherous waters of technological change. Looking back from the ashes of its mobile division, several critical mistakes stand out, illuminating the path from unparalleled dominance to strategic retreat. Perhaps the most glaring error was Nokia's persistent underestimation of software as the new battleground for mobile supremacy. For decades, Nokia had excelled in hardware engineering, building phones that were robust, reliable, and beautifully designed. Their focus was on industrial design, battery life, and call quality, the tangible aspects of a communication device. However, the iPhone and subsequently Android shifted the paradigm entirely. The phone was no longer just a phone. It was a portal to the internet, a platform for applications, a personal computer in your pocket. Nokia, clinging to its hardware-centric view, failed to grasp the urgency of this transition, believing that superior hardware could still carry the day, even with an aging and increasingly fragmented operating system like Symbian. This misjudgment was intrinsically linked to a failure to understand the paramount importance of the ecosystem and developer support. Apple created a tightly integrated hardware and software experience, coupled with the App Store, which rapidly became a vibrant marketplace for innovation. Google, with Android, offered an open-source alternative that attracted a multitude of hardware manufacturers, and crucially, a vast community of developers eager to build applications for a rapidly expanding user base. Nokia, with Symbian, struggled to foster a comparable ecosystem. Its developer tools were often cumbersome, its platform fragmented across numerous device models, and its vision for a cohesive app experience was muddled. Developers, the lifeblood of any modern platform, naturally gravitated towards where the users and the easier development environments were, iOS and Android. Nokia's internal debates about open versus closed systems and its slow pivot meant it missed the crucial window to cultivate this vital aspect of the new mobile landscape. Another significant lesson from Nokia's downfall is the inherent danger of complacency, even for market leaders. For years, Nokia enjoyed an unassailable position with market shares that seemed to defy gravity. This success, while well earned through pioneering work, may have inadvertently fostered a culture where internal processes became slow, decision-making was bureaucratic, and a certain resistance to radical change took root. The not invented here syndrome, a reluctance to adopt external innovations or acknowledge threats from non-traditional competitors, seemingly afflicted the company. When the iPhone emerged, rather than seeing it as a fundamental shift in the industry's direction, it was often dismissed as an expensive niche product, a toy for the wealthy. This initial dismissal bought competitors valuable time to solidify their positions while Nokia debated its response. The brutal nature of technological disruption is perhaps the most overarching theme in Nokia's story. The mobile phone industry didn't just evolve, it underwent a seismic transformation. The rules of the game changed overnight, moving from a focus on voice communication and basic text messaging to rich internet experiences, touch interfaces, and an application-driven paradigm. Nokia, a company built on the old rules, found itself caught flat-footed. Its existing strengths, manufacturing efficiency, global distribution, brand recognition for durability, suddenly became less relevant than software agility, ecosystem management, and rapid innovation in user experience. The market moved at an accelerated pace, and Nokia's internal structures and decision-making processes were simply not equipped to keep up. Finally, Nokia's experience highlights how even a giant can be felled by a failure to adapt. The company had a rich history of adaptation, transforming from a paper mill to a rubber manufacturer, then to an electronics conglomerate, and finally to a telecommunications titan. However, the shift brought by the smartphone era required a different kind of adaptation, one that was less about diversifying into new industries and more about fundamentally reimagining its core business and its value proposition within a rapidly changing technological landscape. The strategic missteps, particularly the late and ultimately ill-fated embrace of Windows Phone, were not just individual errors but symptoms of a deeper inability to pivot quickly and decisively. The company, once a beacon of innovation, became a cautionary tale of how even the most dominant players can succumb when they fail to read the signs of impending disruption and adapt their vision, strategy, and culture accordingly. The lessons learned from Nokia's ashes continue to resonate throughout the technology world, serving as a constant reminder that in the face of relentless innovation, complacency is the deadliest of sins. Yet, despite the dramatic narrative of its decline in mobile phones, Nokia's story does not end there. While the consumer-facing handset division was sold, the company itself endured, proving once again its remarkable capacity for reinvention. Nokia's enduring contributions to mobile technology and telecommunications infrastructure remain foundational to the modern connected world. Long before the flashy smartphones, Nokia was instrumental in developing the GSM standard, the very backbone of global mobile communication. Today, the company, headquartered once again in Espoo, Finland, has strategically pivoted back to its roots in network equipment and licensing, areas where its technological prowess and intellectual property are unparalleled. The current Nokia is a global leader in critical network infrastructure. It's a major player in 5G technology, building the complex networks that enable our increasingly data-hungry lives. From radio access networks to core networks, from fiber optic solutions to cloud infrastructure, Nokia's innovations are quietly powering the digital transformation across industries and continents. Their research and development in areas like network slicing, private wireless networks, and industrial automation are shaping the future of connectivity. Far removed from the consumer spotlight, but absolutely essential to how we communicate, work, and live. This pivot demonstrates a hard-won lesson. Sometimes true strength lies not in chasing every consumer trend, but in focusing on core competencies and foundational technologies. Interestingly, the iconic Nokia brand has also made a return to the consumer phone market, albeit through a different path. In 2016, HMD Global, a Finnish company comprised of former Nokia executives, acquired the rights to manufacture and sell Nokia-branded phones. This new iteration of Nokia phones, running on the Android operating system, aims to recapture some of the brand's former glory by focusing on reliability, build quality, and a clean Android experience. While they don't command the market share of yesteryear, their presence is a testament to the enduring power of the Nokia name and its association with quality in the minds of many consumers. It's a fascinating full circle, with the brand that once dismissed Android now embracing it to offer a new generation of devices. The ultimate lesson from Nokia's epic journey, from a paper mill to a global titan and back to a foundational infrastructure provider, is profound and multifaceted. Innovation, we learn, is not just about groundbreaking technology. It's equally about vision, agility, and an unyielding understanding of the evolving user. Nokia possessed incredible technological prowess, but its vision became clouded by past successes, its agility hampered by bureaucracy, and its understanding of the user's rapidly shifting desires became disconnected from reality. The smartphone era wasn't just a new product, it was a new ecosystem, a new way of interacting with information, and a new paradigm for personal computing. Nokia's failure to fully embrace this shift, to dismantle its old ways of thinking and operating, ultimately cost it its mobile phone crown. This story serves as a powerful, almost biblical parable for businesses today, irrespective of their industry. It underscores the critical importance of avoiding complacency, even at the peak of success. It highlights the danger of becoming too enamored with one's own legacy and failing to see the future that is already unfolding. In a world characterized by accelerating technological change, every company, every industry is susceptible to disruption. The ability to listen to market signals, even faint ones, to adapt quickly and to foster a culture of continuous learning and innovation are no longer competitive advantages. They are prerequisites for survival. Nokia's journey teaches us that market leadership is fleeting, and past glories offer no guarantee for future success. The company's story is a testament to the relentless nature of technological progress and the brutal competition it engenders. It reminds us that the giants of today can become the cautionary tales of tomorrow if they fail to evolve. Yet it also offers a glimmer of hope, that even after a dramatic fall, reinvention is possible. Nokia, the Phoenix, has risen from the ashes of its mobile phone business, not to dominate the consumer market, but to powerfully shape the very fabric of our connected world from a different, yet equally vital vantage point. Its legacy is not just a tale of what went wrong, but a living testament to the enduring spirit of innovation and adaptation that defines the technological age. And so, the echoes of the once ubiquitous Nokia ringtone may have faded from our pockets, but the foundational work of Nokia, the company, continues to resonate through the networks that connect us all.